Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I am your host, Jon Busdeker, the official storyteller of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And first of all, I want to thank everybody who has downloaded our previous episodes. We're off to a really great start. I hope you liked the last one with the mounted unit. That was a lot of fun. They didn't let me ride a horse, but maybe next time when I go out there, they'll let me hop on one of their horses. But this week, I'm pretty excited because we have somebody in here who I didn't even know about their division, so I'm going to learn a lot, and I hope you learn a lot as well. Her name is Corporal Kelly Deegan. She is part of the Property Crimes Unit in Sector 3. Welcome to Behind the Star, Kelly.
Thank you very much.
And so if you listened to one of our episodes recently with Captain Tony Marlowe, he's in charge of Sector 3, and so we've had somebody on there before, but Sector 3 is kind of part of Southwest Orange County.
Correct.
It covers Dr. Phillips, Pine Hills, and some other neighborhoods over that way.
Yes, correct.
All right. So property crimes. Let's just start from the beginning for people who are sort of newbies to all this like me. I've only been here for a few months. So explain, what is the property crimes unit?
So the Property Crimes Unit investigates mostly residential burglaries, vehicle burglaries, commercial burglaries, so they all break down, and several different types of thefts and the criminal mischiefs causing damage to people's property.
And I think you were telling me these aren't exactly like the most violent crimes that are part of that you investigate. It's a certain level of crime, correct?
Correct. It's just dealing with people's property being taken.
So before we get too far, I like to sort of at least talk to people how they ended up here at the agency. So Kelly, how did you end up here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Well, I grew up in Miami. Both of my parents were Miami-Dade police officers. So it is in my blood to become a cop. When I was getting ready to become a cop, Miami-Dade was on a freeze. Orange County was my next option to come up, so I transferred up here.
Did you always want to be a police officer, or was there something else that you wanted to do?
Oh, I don't know. When I was younger, not so much. When I was a younger teenager, I looked at my mom and dad and was like, no, I don't want to do that. But as I got older, you got to see how much of a difference you get to make in people's lives.
Yeah.
And watching shows and stuff with my mom and dad on them, I was like, okay, I can do this. It just happened.
And your job, when you were done with school, you came right here to Orange County?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now, have you always done property crime, or was there something else that you started in?
Well, I started in uniform patrol like typical deputies do. And then I went to become a detective in property crimes. I got promoted, went back to the road, and now I am back in property crimes as a supervisor.
So why did you want to get involved in property crime?
So to me, property crimes is a very, what do I say? It's a very, it's hard to see somebody's house get broken into and you lose jewelry that maybe your grandmother had that you're never going to be able to replace. To me, that's very important to try to get justice for those people. And I think it's a very, a violation of somebody's privacy to go up into somebody's car and your private area. And that to me is very important. While it might not be a violent thing, some of these things mean so much to people, or people have worked really hard for these things. And for somebody to just come take those things, that's the type of things that I like to investigate.
So what's the process of getting into that unit? I mean, you said you were on the road for a while, and then do you just apply to it, or how does that work?
You have to interview against a couple people, and then you get selected depending on your interview. But because I had some experience in it before, it kind of helped.
Okay, and so how many years have you done that now?
I did 2 years as a detective, and now I'm coming up on a year as a corporal in the unit.
So tell me, so how does it work? So let's say I live somewhere in Sector 3, And, I go to work one day and I come home and my back door, my front door is busted in and looks like somebody's been in there. So what's the process? Maybe talk about that.
Okay, so immediately we want you to call law enforcement. Something like that where your house, if you can readily see it, like your front door is broken into, we prefer you to not go inside and look around because you don't know if the perpetrator may still be inside.
That's a good tip.
So,
I mean, you think, I want to go in and check on my stuff, but it's better to maybe let the professionals come out first.
Correct. The best thing to do is to call us first, let us come and check the house, make sure nobody's in there, clear it, and then we'll let you in to do your inspections. But it doesn't always work like that. What if it's your back door?
Yeah, you don't know.
So you don't know. So you've walked in now and then you observe it. You may have already walked around your whole house and don't notice till the last minute. We still prefer you to call us immediately. That's the big thing. And to avoid maybe touching any of the areas that you think maybe they went through, or especially where they came in, because they may have left blood, they may have left fingerprints, so stuff like that. We prefer you to just hold off. I know everybody's like looking around and I want to make sure this is still here. Give us time to do what we need to do, and then you can come in afterwards and check everything.
So once the deputies arrive or the detective arrive, what happens? They interview, they look around, and like you said, they look for fingerprints or they bring forensics in. Tell me what happens next.
I mean, it just depends on the significance of it. If it's if it's just your regular residential burglary, there's no real blood. There's been times where somebody will cut themselves and there'll be a little bit more blood than normal. Then we may call forensics for stuff like that. Most of the time, our deputies on the road can process scenes, especially for burglaries, on their own. So what'll happen is you'll call us, we'll come in, we'll clear the house. Let's just say it's the house. We'll clear the house, make sure nobody's there. We'll ask you to get a statement to verify, that nobody had permission to come into your house, that you want to press charges, and the deputies will process the scene, collect any evidence. Sometimes they leave like a drink behind, and we'll collect any evidence, and then you'll wait to follow up with the detective if the detective doesn't come out that day. It all depends. It varies.
So what do people usually take? Like, what's a typical? Is it jewelry? Is it cash? Is it what do people look for?
So
I say people. What do burglars and the bad guys look for?
So the main things are electronics, jewelry, and money, and your TVs, stuff like that are the big things. Anything that they can readily take quickly. You think it's not easy to take a TV, but they seem to target those things.
I will say they're a lot lighter than they used to be. I have an older television, and I've moved a few times.
That might be the benefit of the older televisions. Nobody's going to come in and take that thing because you'll probably need more than one person to carry it out. But yes, now that TVs have gotten lighter, tablets are a lot smaller now, so it's easier. Stuff that you can pretty much hide away quickly to walk out with so that nobody really notices.
And do the bad guys, do they go and sell it on Craigslist? Do they go pawn it? I mean, what do they do with it afterwards typically? So
that's the big thing that I want to talk about. So we'd like for people to, and a lot of people don't know this, we'd like for people to record down their serial numbers of all their main items, their high-ticket items, their TVs, even if they're appliances. Like if you just renovated your house, I don't expect you to pull out your oven now and go get your... But if you're renovating your house and you get brand new appliances, take down your serial numbers, your jewelry, take pictures of it, especially if it's custom-made jewelry. Any tools that you may have in your house, mark your name on it, take the serial numbers down, because if they do end up at pawn shops, those serial numbers, if you have them, let's just say when you said the deputy shows up, you can say, hey, this is what was taken. It was a DeWalt drill. This is the serial number. If it ends up at a pawn shop, well, the deputy will put it into the system as stolen. So our pawn shops have to record those things.
And a lot of people don't know that.
Yes.
I mean, you think, they just take in stuff and then they sell it, but you're right. I mean, they are very well regulated pawn shops.
Yes.
As long as they know that it's stolen or they can get the serial number, you might be able to get it back.
Correct. So without the serial numbers, we're sort of at a disadvantage, and we have to hope we find it some other way. But if you give us the serial numbers and say, hey, these are the things, all of those things get entered in as stolen. So let's just say your your bad guy gets pulled over 2 or 3 days later with your laptop in the car, if the officer runs that laptop serial number and it's stolen, then we have your item back.
And you know, I know it's a pain. I'm sure people say, well, I didn't think to do that. But I mean, if you took probably an hour one day and said, you know what, everything that I look at my house and I say, everything that if it got taken, it would be a burden on my wallet, write that serial number down, maybe save it somewhere where nobody's going to find it. And you write it in a notebook and just keep it somewhere safe. And you're right, if it ever happens to you, and I'm sure a lot of people say, well, I'm never going to get burglarized. I'm never going to get, people aren't going to do that, but it happens.
Yes, and the jewelry, it's the same thing. The jewelry will end up at pawn shops or stuff like that. And especially if it's custom-made jewelry, we ask that people take pictures of it so that way we can go and take it to the pawn shops and say, hey, have you seen anybody bring anything like this in? That helps us a little bit. It gives us a little bit more to work with because typically these criminals are getting very smart out here, and so we're trying to keep steady on it as much as we can. So the more that you do to help us, the better it is for everybody.
Is it tough sometimes to recover some of these items because people don't take these precautions or this proactive step?
It does. Also because a lot of the stuff is sold on social media now too. So that's where we're also trying to deal with now because the pawn shops are so highly regulated. These things like Facebook and OfferUp and all of that aren't as regulated. So it becomes a little bit more difficult for us. But we see people getting smarter. I see victims, writing to people on OfferUp, hey, send me a picture of the serial number.
Oh,
because
nice.
Then they can check to see with local law enforcement if it is something that's only like $100 that it's probably a lot more than $100, then ask them for the serial number. It may be stolen. You never know.
And you talk about jewelry. I mean, yeah, there's some jewelry that is really expensive, but like you said, there's some that, maybe it's not super expensive, but it means something to somebody else.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is when you get hand-me-down jewelry from your family. It's hard to replace those things. Nothing we can do is ever going to make anybody feel better unless we get it back.
Yeah.
And so if you can provide us with a little bit that'll help us, that's what we're looking for.
Now, before we go much farther, I do want to talk about, car, breaking into cars and stuff too. But has there been a rise, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, has there been a rise or more interest in stealing people's documents as well? Because I've had a few friends where that's happened, where people will break into their house. They might take something here and there, but what they really took was like passports and birth certificates, and they've had a hard time having to recuperate all that stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of the times that happens in vehicle burglaries too, where the wallets are taken, so your social security numbers, your kids' social security numbers. There's actually websites that you can go on and report that stuff has been stolen so that the credit bureaus know that if anything weird comes up, that it's probably not you, or to check with you first. I don't know if we see more of an uptick. It's kind of been steady.
Okay.
Those are people that are specific. Those people that target those things are specifically targeting those things for a reason.
Okay. All right.
You have to have knowledge of what you're going to do with that stuff.
Yeah, you can't just sell that to a pawn shop. They don't want that stuff. No, I don't want to. Like I said, I don't want to put pawn shops in a bad light either. I mean, they do a legitimate business. So yes. I'm not just saying that. So what can people do though? What can people do to protect themselves from something like that in their homes?
So I tell everybody the big thing now is surveillance cameras. If you're able to get surveillance cameras, that's the best thing to do. Even if it's just your front door, we see a lot of the typical is, hey, let's knock and make sure nobody's home first, right? Because people usually don't want to go into somebody's backyard without knowing if anybody's there first. So the doorbell cameras help because usually suspects will knock on the door first to make sure you're not home because they don't want that confrontation.
Yeah, it's much easier.
Yes.
And I'm not dispelling any myths here. It's probably easier to go into a house where nobody's there because you're right. You don't want to encounter somebody who may have a firearm or something like that. It's just easier to knock on the door. All right, you're home. Oh, let's go to the next door.
Yeah.
Find somebody who's not
exactly.
home.
So the front door cameras at a minimum are probably really good just because now if you want to protect your cars, then surveillance cameras are really good. I tell people keep their lights on. You see a lot of people like at night, really dark neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that like to keep it very quiet and serene. They don't have the street lights. Keep your lights on outside because at least if somebody else is outside and they see somebody walking around, they can call. Don't make it look like you're not home. Especially if you're going to leave for a long period of time.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. I mean,
have a neighbor come by, pick up the mail, take any packages that may be at your front door. A lot of people get these regularly delivered packages, and then they sit there for like a couple days. People driving through the neighborhood notice that nobody's been home. Newspapers, I know a lot of people don't use newspapers anymore.
But you can tell. I mean, if you walk through a neighborhood and you see 7 newspapers out, you're like, all right, well, they're not home.
Yes. We also tell people, if you buy like a TV or a computer or something, rip up the box and throw it in your recycling bin.
That's
Don't
a good
put
tip.
the big box outside that tells everybody you just bought a brand new 70-inch TV. And that's what people look for, especially around the holidays. Take advantage of, these some of these places like Ocoee. The city of Ocoee will put out dumpsters where you can actually go and put your boxes away, stuff like that, because you don't want to leave it. Just rip the box up as small as you can and try to fit it away so that the big box is not sitting out there. But anything you can do. The recording your serial numbers will help us. And just make sure you lock your windows and doors.
That's a good tip. I mean, it sounds so simple. It sounds
does.
so simple. But, you go to work one day and you sort of rush out and you say, did I lock the back door? Did I not lock the back door? And so it happens.
Yeah, and a lot of people have alarm systems but don't actually arm them. And that's that we see that a lot, and a lot of people don't understand. Once you do arm your alarm, the alarm company actually needs a number to call you at. So a lot of people switch numbers or have had these alarm systems for so long that the alarm company has to call and check with you first before they can send somebody out, because it may have been accidental. So you have to have a good number to where they can reach you and say, hey, your alarm just went off. Do you want us to send the cops? Because a lot of people don't have accurate numbers on there.
You got to update it.
Yes.
I mean, I'm in that boat where, in the last 4 years, I've probably had 3-4 different phone numbers.
Yes. So the best thing to do is to, make sure you protect yourself and protect your property. Don't make it look like, nobody's there. Leave your lights on. Even if you go out of town, leave your lights on or set it up on a timer. Have a neighbor come over, park a car in the driveway every once in a while so it looks like somebody's there.
So, as we said, it's not just houses. You deal a lot with vehicle burglaries as well. How
Correct.
are those different? How do they differ?
So the vehicle burglaries are probably more prominent than our residential burglaries. We're starting to see a new trend that they call car hopping.
All right, explain that.
So car hopping can mean a bunch of different things, but what it is usually you'll get a group of kids. We say kids because they're usually around juveniles for the car hoppers. It's usually around that 15 to 18-year-old group where they'll go into a neighborhood or they'll go into the parking lot at LA Fitness or at a park or somewhere where there's a large amount of vehicles that they can get into at one time and just pull on door handles. And a lot of people don't lock their doors.
Oh yeah. No, I'm probably guilty of that myself at some point.
Correct. So nobody locks their car doors, especially at their residences. If you feel like you live in a gated community, why do I need to really lock my door? These criminals will find a way to do it. So we have to make it more difficult for them. So the only thing you can do is protect yourself. We tell people to lock their doors. At least makes it a little bit more difficult for them. Don't leave valuables in your car.
Yeah, once again, it seems so easy, but, people get lazy and they say, oh, nobody's going to take my laptop that's on the floor in my car, but they will.
We used to tell a lot of people, make sure it's hidden. I wouldn't even tell people now, think that it's hidden, because they know where to look in those hidden spaces now. If you've got
your car's not that big. So.
Yes. So, don't leave anything of value in the car, especially firearms. We see a lot of firearms that are left in the cars overnight. And now we've got a criminal out there that probably did just a property crime, but now it's elevated to a completely different thing because now there's a firearm put into the situation.
Okay.
So don't leave your firearms in your car. Don't leave your valuables, your wallet, or anything like that. The other big thing is car keys. Everybody leaves a spare set of car keys.
That's so crazy to me. So you say that, and you say that because you see movies, and they're like, oh, how am I going to take this car? I got to get out of here. And then every time they flip the visor down, and the keys are right there. And I always say, who would do that?
That's real
but
life.
But apparently that happens a lot.
Yes. A lot of now, because you've got these push start cars too.
Oh, okay.
So people just leave the key in there or leave a spare key in there. And that's how cars get stolen all the time. And we see it where they'll steal your keys that night, may not steal your car because something happened, something intervened somewhere, but they may come back and try to steal your car again.
Wow.
With those keys. So we ask, don't leave any sets of keys in your car. And that way you can prevent losing your car too, because then that just makes the situation completely worse.
Now, does the property crimes unit deal with vehicle theft as well, or is that a different
No,
unit?
that would be the auto theft unit.
Oh, okay.
As soon as it moves into that, well, now the car has been taken, they're more
I can say from experience.
Specialized
I can
with
say
the
from
auto theft.
experience twice, not here in Orange County, that getting your car stolen is no fun.
No, it's not. It's not.
They did find both of my cars though that were stolen, but
Well, you're lucky.
I don't know if I was lucky. I felt like I could have if it would have gotten stolen and taken, I might have been able to get a new car, but they found them, and so I had to get those cars back. But anyway, so tell me again. I know you said this at the beginning. How long have you been doing property crimes? How many years?
Coming up on 3.
3 years. Okay.
Crimes.
So over those 3 years, does anything stick out to you of things that were taken that you thought were sort of interesting or different? Or because I mean, you break into a house and like you said, I'm sure most of the time it's jewelry or cash or whatever. But I'm sure there's been something that you're like, why would they steal that?
Oh, I don't know. I know that. The appliance now, to me, an appliance is like the hardest thing you could take.
Big. I mean, you can't just steal. One person can't steal a refrigerator.
Right.
I don't think so.
Especially now, the way refrigerators are made, they're huge. I can fit a whole person in there. There is now, we get a lot of these things where people are breaking into the brand new homes or houses under construction where they're taking appliances.
And that's, you think about it, nobody lives there if they're still being built.
And they take advantage of that. And they take advantage of what days people are not doing construction on the homes. And so Sundays are like prime time because some of the times people are still working on homes on Saturdays. So Sunday you come over and you pull a U-Haul truck up to the house and you just take the appliances.
And there's no neighbors. So, I mean, there's probably not if it's under construction. Yep. And then, you see a U-Haul. All right, well, maybe they're just taking
moving
stuff
in.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
So to me, that's like the big thing. There's like a new trend now for vehicle burglaries called bank jugging.
Okay.
Have you heard
No,
of this?
I have not. Explain this to us.
Okay, so this is something that we'd like to talk about too. Bank jugging, from what they consider, is people that go to the banks with bank bags to either make a deposit or to withdraw.
Okay.
Well, criminals will sit out and stake out banks, looking for those people that are either walking in or walking out with bank bags. They call it juggers because they look specifically for those bank bags.
Okay, this has nothing to do with juggalos and ICP.
No. So what we're seeing is that they'll get followed from the bank afterwards. When they come out, if you come out with your bank bag, you'll get followed from the bank. And then if you make a stop, usually at Publix or CVS or somewhere, then they break into your car while you're inside.
Oh, all right.
Because most of the time, they'll watch you if they see that you didn't take the bank bag in with you. I mean, why would you take your big deposit into Publix with you?
True, and you might have $10,000 in cash in there.
Yes, and even if you just went and made a deposit, you may not have any cash, but they think you have cash because you went in and out with a bank bag. So what we're telling people now is when you go to the banks, make it your last stop.
Okay.
Stop wherever you've got to stop before. And if worst case scenario, if you need to stop somewhere, take the money with you.
Yeah. And you think, oh my gosh, why would somebody have $10,000 cash on them? Well, I'll go back to my history. I was a restaurant manager for a while. And so at night sometimes, or even in the morning, which was the better way to do it, you would drop off cash that you made all day. And so maybe that's why. Maybe they took out some money or put some in. And you're right. You make another stop. You say, oh, I just need to stop at Publix real quick. Grab a pub sub before I head home. But you're right. You leave it sitting there. Who's going to take my money? They don't know I have it, but you're right.
So we tell people, be aware of your surroundings when you get there. Watch for cars that may be backed in, because they have to be able to see you good. So they're going to back in. If you can, don't carry the bank bag in. We tell men because men usually don't have purses. So maybe put the bank bag, take it in a bag with you so that it doesn't look like you have a bank bag, so they don't even see the bank bag, because most of the time the bank bag is what they target.
Okay.
So if you put it away before you leave the bank and they don't readily see it with you coming out, they probably won't target you.
Oh, that makes sense. So if you go in and you do have a bag, but just don't.
But you walk out with the bank bag, they're going to target you.
It's
if
like
you don't, if you put it away before you get outside, because they're not going to have somebody inside. Most of the time, they're not going to have somebody inside because somebody would probably think it's a little weird for somebody to sit inside a bank for too long. So they're all going to sit outside, just watch and see people's movements. So just be aware of your surroundings. If you think you're being followed, like if you are like, wow, this car's been following me for a little while, drive to a police station or, call 911 and give your location and we'll come try to intercept it. Anything you can do to protect yourself is the better thing, because if you do absolutely need to stop, we tell you take it inside with you, because if they do break in, they're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to be at a disadvantage.
So going back to like the house burglaries and even the car burglaries, how do you find the people that do these crimes? Like, how do you track them, or how do you eventually get to arrest, or is that really difficult?
It is really difficult. That's why I tell you that the surveillance cameras are really good, because then we'll get pictures of people. We'll put out bulletins, and we depend on latent fingerprints most of the time. Some of the times we get lucky and get DNA. Those things will give us, identifications. If we have a witness, we're big at the sheriff's office on see something, say something.
Yes.
So, if your neighbor sees something weird, we always say it like, what goes on in your neighborhood. You know who belongs and who doesn't belong.
Yes,
you know
definitely.
what I mean? So if you see a car out there that's, weird, write down the tag number, call it in. What's the worst case scenario? Because every single time somebody calls in and says, hey, this is a suspicious vehicle, at least it's documented somewhere. And that way we can follow up on those things later. But witnesses, will try to get people to ID people, but it is very difficult. That's why we try to give all this knowledge to the victims, so that the more that we can do to help each other out, the more successful we are together. I
think that's an important point about your neighborhood. I mean, I live in a neighborhood, and you're right. Like when I first moved in, I've only lived there about 3 years. I didn't know anybody, but over time, I say hi to this neighbor, I say hi to that neighbor, and now we kind of all know each other. And so you're right. If something's going on, we can talk a little bit. We share numbers, we share phone numbers, we share email addresses. And I know as time has changed, I think, how neighborhoods interact. You think, oh, I live here and I don't even know my neighbors. A lot of people say that, but it's really important. You don't have to be best friends with these people, but if you just know them and you say, oh, like I saw somebody at your house the other day and they didn't look like they belong there. Oh, that was just the pool guy, and I told him he could come over.
Yeah.
But that's really important to know.
Yeah, there's applications now like nextdoor.com where you can register your whole little neighborhood. Everybody can talk to each other. So we get a lot of that. When one person's car gets broken into, they'll shoot out a blast on Nextdoor and say, hey, my car was broken into. Make sure you check your cars. It's always, always, always good to report everything to law enforcement. A lot of people are like, especially if you're you left your door unlocked, people are like, oh, I don't want to report it. Like, I kind of left my door unlocked.
Yeah, you don't want to
really
sound like
take anything.
Yeah.
But those things help us. You never know how many they actually did. So, notifying law enforcement is huge. Don't just keep it, in-house. But those those applications where you guys communicate with your neighbors is a big deal, because you guys can share tips on how to do things, and just watch out for each other. That's a big thing.
Yeah, and I think you had alluded to this earlier. You said that people who live in gated communities or even really nice communities, they might have like a false sense of security. Yes. I say this, I live in College Park, and I used to live by the golf course, and it's a really nice community. But about 2 years ago, we had a whole string of burglaries of the car thing, where people would walk and try to open the locks. And I lived in a nice neighborhood. So it's not just like, oh, well, that happens in that part of town. That's a bad neighborhood. They get all the burglaries. That happens everywhere.
It does happen everywhere. And that's why we tell everybody to don't get that false sense of security. Still lock your doors. Still secure your belongings, because you never know when it's going to be the time where the criminal cross paths with you. And that's the important thing, is that you do what you got to do to protect yourself.
Now, does your unit only do residential, or do they do commercial stuff too?
We do commercials. We do residentials, vehicles, commercials, and all kinds of thefts. So like shoplifters and stuff from like Walmart.
Oh, really?
Yes. Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, all those places. We do all of those. And then if somebody maybe damages some property, does some graffiti, stuff like that, that comes to us.
Oh, that might have to be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
we could talk about graffiti, a whole nother podcast. What about the reverse side of it? I asked you earlier about, what were maybe some strange things that were taken, or what was maybe something unique. What happens when you recover something and you bring it back to the person? I mean, does that happen every now and then?
I mean, we get lucky every once in a while and can bring back some property. I think that's the most fulfilling part of the job, is when you can bring back something that means so much to people. People don't like their IDs and stuff when you said it, that they take their IDs. When we can recover, most of the time that stuff gets dumped, because they don't want to have anything that's going to tie them specifically to the victim. So some of the times we see, if you break into a car and you take their wallet, they'll dump all the stuff out, because they don't want anything that's why would I keep the ID of the person I just broke into their car on me? Yeah. So you can hope for best case scenario that that's what happened. But
can you recall anything that you maybe returned to somebody that was very, very, very thankful for it?
Oh, gosh, I do. I know that we had a guy, we work a lot with the outside counties too, where somebody will break into a house over there and then come and pawn it over here, because they think if they go out of county that we're just not going to figure it out.
We do talk to each other here and there.
I remember a couple months ago, I had the guy had just lost his dad or something, and his dad had given him a ring, and it really was very, very sentimental value. He knew the guy that had stole it, so we figured out where he took it to pawn it, and we were able to return it. And just seeing the minute I brought it out from the pawn shop, because we go to the back and grab it, it was just like, he could see it through the clear bag, and he just broke down crying. Wow. And just like having him put it on, because we have to verify that it's his, and he's like, look, it's gonna fit perfectly on this finger, and like he was just in tears. And that to me is why I do property crimes. Although it's like the most difficult thing in the world, because it's hard to, when we don't recover the property, it's difficult to tell people, hey, we can't find it, you know what I mean? But when we do get those couple of successful cases, it makes it all worth it.
All right. Well, Corporal Kelly Deegan, thank you so much for chatting with us. I think those are some good tips, and I feel like it all kind of boils down to like, just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your house, and don't be lazy about it. I mean, like I said, it's really easy to just say, I don't need to lock my door, or nobody's going to break in here, but just be aware of all those things.
Right. Do what you can do to protect yourself and to help us. If you are a victim of the crime, then I've given you guys some tips that'll help you help us in our investigation. Yes. And that's the best way we can be successful together.
And then now that you're done listening to Behind the Star, take the next hour and write down all your serial numbers from all your important things.
Yes. And if you want to, you can actually mark them, because if those markings should be documented places at like pawn shops and stuff like that. If you put your initials on it, that helps later on, because nobody can take those off of there.
Interesting. Like a brand on a cow almost.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.